I would like to again thank Andy and Jamie for being our moderators this evening, the Cedar Falls Utilities for broadcasting this debate, and also want to thank the 4 nonpartisan organizations who are sponsoring this debate: the Women of Action, Cedar Valley Activate, American Association of University Women of Cedar Falls and Waterloo, and the organization that I represent, the Northern Iowa Student Government. For our mayoral candidates tonight, we'll be hearing from Tom Blanford, Rob Green, and Dave Syres. Thanks.
Hi, you each have 2 minutes to give an opening statement. We will just go from left to right, so we'll start with Mayor Green.
Thank you very much, and thank you to NISG for sponsoring this activity, and as well as our other organizers, and also to our moderators who now are on hour 3 of this adventure. Thank you very much for your time tonight as well. I first became interested in City Council in 2013 when I was elected president of the Overman Park Neighborhood Association. I have a strong interest in civics and vibrant neighborhoods, and took the opportunity to volunteer on City Council campaigns. When the Council at Large seat opened in 2017, I threw my hat in the ring. I didn't have any hot button issues, but I thought my degree in public policy, my natural curiosity, and my healthy skepticism would be a good fit for City Council. Now, fast forward to now, I'm running for a second 2-year term because I still believe that there's a need to complete my primary objective of reforming the Public Safety Services Department for long-term sustainability and accountability, as well as a host of other initiatives the city is dealing with. I'm entirely dependent on a City Council majority to make what I call the PS22 plan happen. And I also want to continue several major reforms and improvements to city governance. As I've been door knocking, I've heard broad support for my deliberative and measured leadership, as well as my overall approachable sense of governance. This inspires me to keep pressing ahead, despite the significant challenges we've all encountered over the past 2 years.
Thank you. Mr. Blanford?
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to thank NISG, the Women of Action, the American Association of University Women, and Cedar Valley Activate for hosting this debate. I also would like to thank Dr. Renfro, Mr. Ballone, and our timekeepers. They have the hardest job here this evening. And I also want to thank the Channel 15 staff for putting in the extra hours this evening so that the residents can view this debate since they can't be with us here this evening. The past 2 years have been one of the most difficult times for our community. We've lost friends and family members, seen our small businesses close their doors, and experienced real division in Cedar Falls. I lost my dad to COVID-19 in February after a 3-month fight. For weeks after he passed, I heard from hundreds of people across this community. People talked about how much my dad loved Cedar Falls and the people who live here. These stories help me remember what it means to be a part of our community, and that we all have a choice in what kind of city we want Cedar Falls to be. I'm running for mayor to be a part of making that choice. I look forward to your questions this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Syres?
Thank you to the UNI students, the UNI campus and their students. You're definitely the lifeline of this community. When you're not here, it's not the same place. I drive through the UNI area probably 5 or 6 times a day. I love the UNI students, and I want to thank the student government for having us. Also the other groups, the moderators, timekeepers, and all the great people of Cedar Falls who are at home watching. I'm Dave Syres. I'm currently the councilman at large. I met my wife Lisa on our very first day of kindergarten right over here at Lincoln School. We actually went to school in an old church annex, and I'll never forget the first day I met her. I always say it was the best day of my life, and she always said it was her worst day. We've been together 39 years. We raised 3 great kids. I love them all 3. My son still lives in town. I got 3 granddaughters who I absolutely adore. They do all kinds of things, a lot of the things that I did, but they don't get in too much trouble. We have a great life in Cedar Falls, and I'm not so much a politician as I'm a businessman. I look around and see things that could be corrected, and I want to correct those things. We have this great trajectory in Cedar Falls to make this absolutely the best community on the earth as far as I'm concerned. Sometimes we make some mistakes, sometimes we miss priorities where we should have them. We just need to correct a few things. We can't stumble forward without correcting things that come up where we need to go back and correct. One of the things I'm thinking is the road to Aldrich School. There's no use to work on 27th Street before we get that problem solved. We need to look at all these different things. The one thing I've pushed for my full 2 years is I want committees of the council, and I've pushed for that. My old friend Stan Smith, he said that was one of the most important things, where all of the different council people could get together and discuss things and actually be with the department head. We need to go back to some basics. I'm a businessman. I look at things logically, and I love Cedar Falls and the people who live here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Some of the questions that were submitted are for each candidate specifically. So I'm going to ask a couple of these questions that are directed, but then I will give the other candidates time to address the topic more generally, if that's okay with all of you. So this first question is for Mayor Green. You have put forth a plan for changing public safety services known as PS 22. The plan was put together and published without discussion or consultation with our public safety professionals or others on city staff, past or present. Why did you not seek out experts on the subject matter, and with whom did you consult?
That's a great question, and that appears in my brochure in the center. It's a very broad plan, and I should just mention what that is. Restoring the firefighter job classification, adopting profession-specific physical fitness standards, so for police and for fire, the separate standards that are appropriate for their career, changing PSO from a job class to a 2-year certification, ending the public safety supervisor job class, and changing director from being a full-time position to a supplemental duty. And going into this, I had wanted to have a council discussion and a public forum about these very topics back when I first started on as mayor. That was early in 2020. In that agenda item to have a discussion about the future of public safety, instead they chose to eliminate the firefighters. This plan, I certainly can talk more about it, but the plan itself is very broad on purpose. I did contact firefighters and police officers about it, and this is based on a lot of discussion behind the scenes.
Thank you. Would you like to address the topic?
Sure. I guess in having reviewed Mayor Green's PS 22 plan, there are a number of areas that I have questions about. The assertion of a lack of physical fitness, frankly, I really question. The men and women who serve in our department are absolutely capable of keeping this community safe. These are folks who are Ironman competitors, Boston Marathon runners, members of the U.S. Marine Corps. I have no doubt that they're physically fit enough to do the job, and I think anyone who watches their training would see that. In terms of changing the public safety director position, to me, it doesn't make sense from an organizational perspective to have your department heads competing to see who's going to be in charge from one year to the next. I think that really lacks a certain level of consistency. I can't imagine in my own organization working for a credit union, if we changed our senior leadership every year, I don't know how we would ever get anything planned or get anything done. So I'm not certain that this plan is actually executable.
I'd like a rebuttal to that. So with the physical fitness standards, I certainly understand the majority of the officers, perhaps even all of the officers, are physically capable of doing both physical fitness tests. If that's the case, why are they concerned about doing it? Why not prove that they can handle it so that our public is assured that they have the ability to perform both physical roles? It's not rocket science. I'd also like to say for the item of the public safety director, it wouldn't be a 1-year turnover. It would be the most senior person of the two, and I imagine that person could be in that position for several years.
Please.
I guess and I apologize, Mr. Green, but I thought in the original part of your plan, you talked about having the two directors or the two chiefs compete for that director position. So there's some clarification there. And as far as the testing, the officers already go through testing. They use the same test that the United States military uses to evaluate physical fitness. So I don't understand the comment of why not take a test. They already do to qualify.
Mr. Syres?
I don't know why there wasn't a PS 20 plan and a PS 21 plan. He's been in office for 2 years. I have a very easy and simple plan. I'm going to split into two departments like it should be. I want the very best firefighters, and I want a fire chief that's fantastic. I want to be able to compete at the level of Waterloo. Waterloo has fantastic firefighters. And I want to have a great police force with a great police chief. And I want them to do the best policing they possibly can. I don't want these guys to try and be two different things and wear two different hats. I want my firefighters to train as firefighters, and I want my police officers to train as police officers. These two different skill sets take a tremendous amount of time and effort to be at the top. I don't want any, the cross-training is fine, but no, we're gonna have firefighters, we're gonna have police officers, and if they can assist each other, that's fine. They always have worked together. We need to get rid of this division and just go back to what we had, a great fire department and a great police department.
I have a quick rebuttal to that.
We'll go there and then back
Okay.
to Blanford.
So the reason there hasn't been a PS 2021 plan or a 2020 plan is that there is only one person on council that I can support for these changes, and that's Councilmember Harding. I don't even believe that Councilmember Syres would support this plan because it doesn't go to the extreme that he wants. So the reason I've had to hold back before bringing forward something is to make it part of an election discussion. And if there are changes that experts want to see or some differences, let's discuss that. But we need to have a plan moving forward. I'm looking forward to talking with council about that in the new year.
Thank you. Mr. Blanford?
So to Councilman Syres' point, we have separate police and fire departments now. As has been mentioned earlier this evening, there are officers assigned to 24-hour fire shifts, and there are officers assigned to 8-hour police shifts. You can go down to either station and see them any day of the week. So we have officers now. They are fully trained and fully certified by both state academies, the same qualification that any officer in the state has. They could go anywhere in Iowa and do that job. So they absolutely are qualified and capable of keeping us safe.
I disagree with that. They start out as a grade 1. They have no experience. I want experienced firefighters fighting my fires, running my trucks, putting my ladders up. I want experienced police officers. To say they have the same skill set and mindset, the mindset of a firefighter is different than the mindset of a police officer. Those are two occupations that I want them to be the very best at, firefighters and police officers.
Thank you.
Mr. Syres, what would it take to make that transition back?
What we'll have to do is split them down the middle, get rid of our PSO chief. That position will be gone. Then we need to put in people at the top who are only want to be full-time police and full-time fire. You can start with the 30 you have to be your firefighters and then upgrade from there. Then our police officers on the other side, they'll be able to be police officers and concentrate on that. It's going to be a 5-year period before we get up to any sort of competitive value with Waterloo.
Any rebuttal?
So there's a couple areas there that I guess I have questions about. When you talk about splitting them down the middle, how are you going to divide those officers? And you said start with the 30 and then build from there. What is the number that we're looking for, and more importantly, how are we going to pay for that number? We have the staff now that have volunteered for this work. They get to choose which division they want to work in, so they can say, I prefer police and be primarily police assignment, or I'm primarily a fire assignment. So they are split now. They work in 2 divisions, but they have the ability to help each other. So I don't understand how you would split down the middle and then build from there.
You just got done telling us that we have a fire side and a police side. Now, back in around 1980, Hoffa had the public safety officers, and that's what he called them. Then they had a police side and a fire side. If you have these firefighters, as you say you do, that's what they want to be. I'll start with them. And then on the other side, you have the police, and we'll start with them as the police. And then we'll get 2 great teams, and they will complement each other, and they will work together, but they'll be separate police and separate fire.
So I've got a deal here. But the PS22 plan is a compromise position that keeps us the benefits of cross-training while separating out police and fire. I would love to implement this over the next 2 years. If it works, great. If not, we can go to the more extreme route. But I believe that just separating and cutting out and basically gutting the department as it is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There are proven benefits to cross-training, and we should appreciate those.
So no matter which way we end up going, the division in the community, and kind of the vitriol that we hear surrounding this topic, thank you, is pretty extreme. How do we go about healing the community, no matter what we end up doing in terms of a solution on this issue? I forget who's even supposed to start this time. Mr. Blanford, start.
So you're right, this topic has been very divisive in our community. It's frankly been used to divide this community, and it's terribly unfortunate. I think really the core mission has to be rebuilding that trust and confidence in both City Hall and in our public safety team. That stems frankly, from senior leadership, from elected officials speaking positively about the program, addressing concerns with staff members, not necessarily on television, but directly with the staff or with the mayor, and then providing opportunities for the public to participate. Have the trainings be live and allow citizens to observe those trainings, be able to bring folks out to public safety on a frequent basis, and then having public safety actually go out into the neighborhoods, having our officers able to meet with residents to answer their questions and make sure that they feel confident. If they call 911, whoever shows up will know how to help them.
Thank you. Mr. Syres?
I believe the majority of people, when we get them divided back, as they should be, with the police department and a fire department, will like that the best. We will have far superior on both sides. They don't have to mix. I want them to train. I want our firefighters to train all day. I don't want them to be policemen during the day, but if they get a call, be a firefighter. I want them to train. I want them to be the best. I want experienced firefighters at the top training the young guys that come in. When we have no experience to train off of, and we have new recruits, the old firefighters like to leave a legacy. They like to teach the young guys. And it's the same way in the police department. They like to train the young guys. So we need to have the old guys it's no different than the old farm dog. You always bought a young farm dog to be trained by the old farm dog. It's the same concept. We got to have the two, we got to have them separated, and they need to train.
If I might follow up real quick. But what if we don't? What if the decision does not get made to go back to two separate? How do we move forward? How do we get over kind of this divisive, polarized point that we're at and move forward?
I'm not sure, because the thing that it shows us, when our fire insurance goes up in town, it shows that we're not as safe. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I just want to have my separate departments, and whoever gets voted in here is going to be able to move their direction. And if they need to heal that way, that will be up to a real leader. Leaders can get things done. If they want to lead that direction, then they will have the community heal. If I lead my direction, I'll have the community heal. I love Cedar Falls. I don't want it torn apart. I've loved this community my entire life. All the things I've done here, all the great things we have. It's like I said, I love you, and I drive through there 4 to 10 times a day. I'll bet it's even more than that. I love seeing the students up there. When you students weren't here last year, it was a drag. I can hear the bands from my house when they're out practicing. I can hear the rugby players. It's the greatest area to grow up in around the college.
Thank you. Let's let Mayor Green go first before rebuttals.
So a certain percentage of Cedar Falls residents believe that the PSO model is perfectly fine as is, and they generally support Mr. Blanford. Others have valid concerns about how the public safety officer concept is carried out and believe that structural changes are necessary. I'm in that camp. Others want to get rid of the PSOs entirely, and they generally support Mr. Syres. I believe that the reasonable reforms of the PS22 plan will satisfy those like me in the somewhat concerned camp. I'm not optimistic that we can unify the city in this one next term, because the psychological damage and distrust have not been addressed for several years now. And this dovetails on so much other discord in our society in general, and involves a lot more things than just the PSO model. So I believe that the reforms are necessary to get in the community through this difficult chapter in our history, and I look forward to using neighborhoods and neighborhood connectivity and engagement to help heal these wounds.
Thank you.
So to the earlier point about training, the officers assigned to fire are training every day. You can see them from the highway when they're using the ladder trucks. You can observe that training anytime you want to. These folks are constantly training to state standards. There's, in fact, if you drive out there right now, I believe you'll see a trailer that's from the state fire academy that they're using for training. So these folks are constantly training, and we've been rated by Independent Insurance Service Organization as having a safe and effective department. So if fire insurance are going up, I think we should look at factors about building material costs and general inflation rather than blaming it on our department.
I'd like to comment on that. I'm not blaming it on the workers. I'm blaming it on the higher-ups. The people that are there trying to do their job, I have respect for them. But what I'm saying is the people at the top. It needs to change. We need a separate department on both sides.
Thank you.
So something very missing in this conversation in the community is the transcript from the fire union versus Cedar Falls trial. It's not releasable to the public yet. It was a 6-day trial. I read the transcript before finding out that I wasn't allowed to read the transcript. And when that comes out, I think that's going to raise several eyebrows in this community for what happened in the past. I wish I could speak more fully on it, but the court has ordered not to. But if the fire union certainly can provide that information to you.
Is there any information on when that's supposed to be available?
Unfortunately not. The judge, talking to the city attorney, he says it could be several weeks. It could be a year. Because it's a civil case, it doesn't have the immediacy that a criminal case would have. So we just have to wait.
I'd like to comment on that. My friends were there for the entire days, and they told me the things that went on there. I truly believe that the administration sealed that. They appealed they appealed it only to cover this up so that it wouldn't be opened before the election. So to me, I believe that they should open that up now so we can all see what it says.
That isn't true. And it's continual finger pointing at the city of this expectation that the city's doing things that are evil and wrong all the time. This is directly from Judge Harris, not pulled by the city to say we don't want to show it, but by the judge to say this was only intended for the attorneys to prepare their closing statements.
That's correct. But if we had not appealed it, that would be wide open right now.
Disagree.
All right, let's move on from the public safety officer model. Another question submitted was there seems to have been more turnover inside City Hall than this person has recalled or noticed in recent years. What is the mayor's responsibility what's their responsibility for promotion of staff engagement? How should the mayor promote communication between staff and mayor, council to staff, and staff to staff? So overall, how can you promote, less turnover and more communication between the different entities? And I guess we'll start with, Mr. Syres.
Well, one thing we need to do is bring back our committees. Our council committees are really the stronghold to let the citizens have input to department heads and also to get feedback from those department heads to take to either the city manager or to the mayor. So when we don't have these, this is really the place where we can communicate with department heads on what needs to be done, where money should be spent. And I've worked for 2 years, and Stan Smith was the one that helped me, because we used to have 7 committees with 3 council people on each committee, and that's how we got our communications done. There's some other things unfolding inside administration. I know myself personally, after one meeting, I got yelled at for an entire hour by a city administrator. Now, when I got home, I walked in the back door, and my wife and I have been together all through high school and everywhere else, and she looked at me and she said, "Well, did you get detention?" I said, "Yeah, you could call it that."
Thank you.
So one of the things that I really want to see happen, and council has already agreed to in our last goal-setting session, was a workplace climate audit for the city. It's not been done in many, many years, and I think it's extremely important to be able to have an anonymous survey conducted by you and I or an outside party to find out what the staff morale is, reasons for people leaving, and then also having not just the leaving, but a staying interview. Like, why are people staying? What's retaining them? What's keeping them here? We lost a very competent admin supervisor due to flex time. She wasn't able to find daycare for her daughter, and so she was able to go work for a different government agency that allowed for more flexible time. And so the workplace climate audit, I believe, is going to happen now that we have our new HR manager on board. I want to see that occur very soon, and also to ensure as a mayor that the council and we are all setting the tone that we support our city staff.
You're right. There have been a growing number of resignations, and we've lost a number of very talented staff. We lost a city engineer recently. We also lost our HR manager after only 8 months, who specifically cited the climate in City Hall. The Office of the Mayor is absolutely responsible for every employee. As with my own organization, it's your responsibility to coach down through your chain. So you're able to not only coach your immediate direct reports, but also the staff farther down. Make sure they have open access to you and that they know you're a facilitator. To me, the role of mayor is the same thing for council. If the council member has a concern, they should be able to go to the mayor and the mayor will help them resolve it rather than berating a staff member on television or taking other action that's bad for staff morale. So the mayor is absolutely accountable for that.
And just to be clear, I wasn't the one berating the staff member in public. Also, to tie to the question of the loss of an employee, certainly for our HR manager, much of that was due to overwork and the fact that this person was brought in to basically run the Human Rights Commission and was not part of her normal work. It wasn't expected for her work job. So I completely understand wanting to seek employment that was a little bit lighter. It just was not what she expected. And we could do a better job of advertising and making sure that our employees are doing what they're trained to do.
Thank you. Mr. Syres?
Yes, I was the one that called that engineer out. He threatened my property and threatened my business. I've been in the same business my entire life. He told me he was going to run a bicycle trail down through the middle of my property, and I would have to recuse myself and wouldn't even be able to get to vote on it. Well, the only place that I can say anything and have it do any good is at a council meeting where it's on TV, so that's where I did it. Now, these other two gentlemen up here, and they're very fine and all, they've never fired anyone in their life. And private business is where I've been, and I was in the concrete business, I was in the excavating business, and there's not a lot of people who can handle that kind of roughnecks, but I always could. So for me, it was just a normal course of action, and that's just the way it is. Sometimes people need to go.
Mr. Blanford, you kind of signaled first.
First of all, I've been in the financial industry for 13 years. I certainly have had to separate people from their employment. I don't take pleasure or glee in it. It's always an unfortunate thing, but it's certainly something that any of us that have been in management have had to do.
Thank you.
I've had to fire people also, and it's not pleasant, but you do it when you have the information that you need and it's handled appropriately. There's an actual investigation. What Councilmember Syres did at that council meeting was unconscionable because he brought out into the public eye an issue that should have been resolved through a private investigation. What he did was character assassination, pure and simple. The person quit soon after because there was no chance he could get a fair reputation here in Cedar Falls, and that is to Mr. Syres' detriment.
I'd like to comment on that.
Please.
There was an investigation, and we went, and I had a witness who heard the whole conversation on how he had threatened me, and then all that had to be sealed up. That's how this government now works. If you want to know the inner workings of this government, you got to put somebody in charge like me who's not afraid and will uncover all of these things. It's not that big a deal to me. I love this community like none other, and I don't want to see it ripped apart by bad characters.
I think that's a...
Council members, I have to reply to
No,
this because
please.
Councilmember Syres made that accusation and explained that out to the public with these accusations prior to the investigation.
That's right.
So you have your facts backward.
No, absolutely I do not. You called for the investigation after I brought that out.
Correct. However,
And then what came of that investigation?
it was unfounded. The person that he
Not
accused
true.
was not even in the room.
I think that this can kind of get boiled down a little bit more generally to questions of leadership style.
Absolutely.
So starting here to my left, Mayor Green, how would you describe your leadership style, and why do you think that that is a good match for this particular position? And then we'll have everybody answer that.
Certainly. I've got my Clifton strengths right here. I'm an includer. I like people to feel part of the group. It's very important to me that everyone feels welcome and everyone believes that they have a say. I'm strategic, so I'm very talented in seeing alternative solutions and building processes. Also winning over others, which doesn't surprise anybody for a politician, but I love meeting new people and I love strangers, finding out where they're from, what interests them, and I don't shy away from conflict. I'm a learner, very actively, constantly seeing my role as a mayor as being a perpetual student, trying to learn as much as I can about the job, and also sharing that with others, which I do often through my blog posts. And it's not saying, hey, I'm right. It's saying, this is where I got the information. This is how I interpreted it. If you feel differently, if you take that information some other way, please do. And then also, I'm futuristic. I think very much about what the city should look like. I'm an artist, very creative, and I see how Cedar Falls could be, and we're on that path. I just want to get us further along.
Thank you. Mr. Blanford.
Well, you have to ask my staff after performance review time, but I think really my philosophy really boils down to the concept of I'll never ask my staff to do anything I don't know how to do or I'm not willing to do. Every position I've managed, I've made sure that I know the job, I understand how it works and how it integrates into the organization as a whole. I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves and help out, whether that's on the front lines or whether that's on the phone or whatever is needed. And that's really the attitude I try to take when I approach leadership.
I love Cedar Falls. I loved it 5 years ago. I loved it 10 years ago. I loved it 20, 30, 50 years ago. We have the greatest community. It's going to take a little change now, but we don't need outsiders coming in with studies to tell us about form-based zoning and try and take properties away. I have a business sense. I've run a business independently since I was 18 years old. I bought out my family's business at 30 years old. I've run that business for 30 years. The people that I serve, I love to serve them. It's a great community, and I have a different set of skills. And if the people want to vote me in on November 2nd, I'd love to be their mayor.
I have a quick rebuttal to Mr. Blanford's statement, because talking about being a specialist in the financial industry, when you're an executive, especially as a mayor, you can't know everything that your staff does. It's too complex. You have to be able to trust those people that you work with. And if you try to put yourself into the shoes of every position and understand exactly what they do, that's micromanagement. And as a senior executive, you have to move beyond that to appropriate delegation to the staff and trusting them to do their jobs while having metrics to keep them accountable.
And along those same lines,
I have to disagree with Mr. Green a little bit. As a senior executive for an organization, it's imperative that I know how every role impacts the organization. I don't need to be the expert in what they do, but I need to understand how they do it and how it benefits the entirety. So to me, a good leader understands those facts and is able to engage their employees. I can't manage someone if I don't understand what their role is.
I mean, along those same lines, one of our questions was, what is the role of professionals and experts in city decision-making process? So would you mind expanding upon that, Mr. Blanford?
Sure. So there are a number of technical fields with any organization, but with the city especially, whether that's engineering, public works, public safety, finance and business operations, and these positions require very specialized skills. In this current environment, it's very difficult to recruit those people. So as a city, we have an obligation to retain the folks that we have and to make this the best possible work environment that we can, because it's very expensive to have to replace those positions. It costs money, it costs time. So to me, the mayor's office has an obligation to help make this the best workplace possible, which will help us attract and retain that talented staff that we need.
Mr. Syres?
I do love an expert's opinion, make no mistake, but the most important thing is the input from the citizens. The citizens need to input to their council people. The council people need to be receptive to what they say and then try and move forward. And the one way we can do those things is through subcommittees. I keep harping on that, but that is so important. We need the citizens to tell the council people what they want, and then we can go to the experts and see what they think.
Well, I'm sure it comes as no surprise to you that kind of civic engagement in the United States is certainly not at its peak, to put it mildly. How would you encourage participation in that beyond the people who are kind of natural participators, like those of us sitting in this room?
I'd like to have town hall meetings, but when we had COVID, we couldn't even say anything about that. But I think that's quite important. I think all of these areas where we can meet and talk, they're all important. The more engagement we can get with citizens, As a matter of fact, when I first got on the council, I said, could I have an office up front and I'll just meet people on Fridays? No, I couldn't have that. So I meet people at my office where I work, and I'm glad to do that. I always answer my phone. So I try and answer my phone. If people want to call me, I'm actually very friendly, even though sometimes I get wound up. But I love the people here, and they need to get engaged, and they need to be informed. We just had the zoning change for an entire area, and no one really got communicated with.
Mayor Green?
Wow, that was my look of surprise. We very much communicated with the public on zoning changes. And as I look at how we engage the public, we have to think technologically. Certainly, some people prefer Currents, the newsletter. Some people still gravitate towards in-person. But there is so much of a potential for connecting with younger audiences through their phones. I've been a big proponent and was one of the early pushers of Nextdoor.com, which is a national service that here in the Cedar Falls area has about 5,000 residents. And I, as one of my mayor initiatives early on, I tasked Amanda Huseman, our communications specialist, with building stronger engagement through Nextdoor with the public. And there's been a tremendous response. I would love to see more of that kind of engagement from CFU and other agencies, like when we had the power outage last night, to be able to get information out right away to the public. The two-way street comes through, as Councilmember Syres said, in-person meetings as much as possible and making yourself available, which I often do.
So you're right. Unfortunately, participation in local government is pretty low. Our voter turnout is very small, which is unfortunate. It is about providing as many opportunities as possible for people to participate. I would love to see, if I were elected, I'd be asking the council about taking the city council meetings on the road, as it were. So taking them to different parts of the city and trying to engage the individual neighborhoods. I think the mayor shouldn't be just knocking doors during election season. I think the mayor should be engaging with one-on-one with residents throughout the year. You know, there certainly are some options with technology to better engage people. I was a little surprised to see recently where the decision was made to take Zoom access away and make it contingent on the level of infectiousness of COVID-19. I think that was a wrong decision. I think Zoom should continue to be an access point for people, because it's not always convenient to drive down to a city council meeting if you've got kids in sports or if you've got family obligations. That Zoom option lets you still stay engaged and participate. So I think we should explore all of those avenues.
Next question is to Mayor Green. During elections, we tend to see, campaigns focus on 2 or 3 big issues, maybe in this case 1. What do you think is a big issue, or at least another big issue facing Cedar Falls that we haven't already talked about?
Well, probably the biggest for me is the sustainability of our community in terms of new developments. What's going to happen with the Sartori Hospital or Mercy One Hospital property when it eventually shifts out to Green Hill Road, to the high school once that transfers out, and then College Square Mall, how we're going to develop that. Very happy to see the Cedar Falls Economic Development Corporation funded to help begin some of that work of seeing what we're going to look like going forward. But I'm very concerned about ensuring that we're properly engaging with infill, which is basically building up your existing infrastructure and not just spreading out, because that's the easier solution. I know we have a lot of opportunity to the west and also to the north with residential development with North Cedar, but I want to ensure that we don't do that at the expense of the infrastructure and the buildings and things that we already have in place. I want to make sure we capitalize on those.
One of the most critical issues facing Cedar Falls right now is our workforce shortage. We've all seen the businesses that are closing because they don't have the staff. That's not sustainable. We have to rebuild our workforce in Cedar Falls. Last year, the Chamber, what's now Grow Cedar Valley, did a survey. 70% of our businesses said they can't fill the open positions they have. We can do all the economic development we want, but if we don't have the workforce to sustain it, it's not going to last. A big part of that is helping partner with UNI to rebuild our student population. We're down almost 5,000 students from our peak. That we can't continue in that direction. We cannot afford to have UNI not be a strong partner, and we need the city to help rebuild that.
Okay.
I think one of the biggest challenges is this form-based zoning. We have to be so careful. Right now, we have zoning that covers R1, R2, R3, R4, and it puts them in different categories. So you have residential houses that are single-family, on up to duplexes, on up to great big apartment buildings. What this zoning will do is let big apartment buildings be built right in amongst the other houses as long as it looks like it. You can't have that. These nice, tranquil neighborhoods will never be the same again. We've got to be careful with form-based zoning. The thing about it is also, it's never been tried in a community this size. It's normally like places like Chicago, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, places like that have a different inner city and a different vibe. This is something we have to be really careful of. The other thing, we got to worry about the visioning plan, which doesn't have enough parking for our merchants downtown. We need to be concerned about not creating more of a problem in a place that already has a problem. We need our subcommittees back. We also need priority spending. We got to figure out where we spend our money and look to the biggest priority and spend it there first.
Mr. Blanford.
I want to push back on that a little bit because the term form-based zoning has been used as a kind of a fear tactic for people. This process started with residents. It was hundreds of people coming forward saying, this is what we want the vision of our community to look like in the future, and it's now the elected officials' responsibility to execute on that vision. This process creates more opportunities for residents to be involved, and it helps kind of set the vision and for what we want Cedar Falls to be in 20 years. So this is not a process to take away people's property. It's a process for you to be able to say, this is what I want my neighborhood to be.
Thank you. Okay, we are rapidly running out of time. So I am going to let each of you have 60 seconds to do a closing statement. Let's start with Mr. Syres.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everybody again for having this forum. It's always great to get ideas out there. I want to thank Thomas. I want to thank Mayor Green for being great candidates. This community is the greatest community anywhere. We need to just tweak it a little bit, not get too excited. We don't want to stumble forward. We want to fix things as we go along. That's how any good businessman does things. He doesn't let things get out of control and then start to fix them. So we need to just be a little bit careful. I love this community like none other, and I definitely love my grandkids like none other. And this is the place to grow up and live and have a family, and I love Cedar Falls. Vote for me for mayor on November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Green?
Cedar Falls is generally on the right track, and I believe the majority of residents agree. Our quality of life is high, our taxes are low, and our neighborhoods are gaining much-needed vitality, and our economy is strong. That said, I'm eager to work with a supportive council to correct the deficiencies of the public safety officer model, and also to continue improving government processes, and then I'll turn the reins over to the next full-time mayor in 2 years. I'll support him or her as I go back to the UNI career I love. Still, we have so much to do in the meantime, including the PS22 plan. I'm ready and excited to do it if you'll vote for me and for council members who support reform. These next 2 years, you can count on me to continue leading city government with integrity, creativity, transparency, and humility, and with a very healthy appreciation for the law and the principles of good governance. I'm counting on you as voters to give me that opportunity with your vote as mayor on November 2nd.
Thank you. Mr. Blanford?
I want to thank everyone again tonight who made this debate possible, and to all of the candidates for their participation this evening. This election is about making a choice. As residents, we have opportunity to choose what we want our community to look like over the next 20 years. We can choose to become further divided, or we can reach out a hand, help each other up, and move this community forward. As your mayor, I will work with city council, city staff, UNI, and all of our residents to make this the best place to call home. I want to thank you again for your time tonight, and I hope to earn your vote on November 2nd. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all three of you for being here tonight on behalf of everyone. And just to kind of repeat what all of you said, Election Day is November 2nd, and we hope everybody shows up. We have a good turnout. Thank you very much.